All right, so what we talked about in class today was how do I go ahead and solve an equation that I cannot factor? So one way to do this is to find a couple of roots or a couple of factors so that you can at least divide out by those factors and get this equation down to an x squared equation. Once it's down to an x squared equation or a quadratic equation, we could solve it. So as soon as you decide you can't factor it, what you're going to want to do is to go to your calculator and put it into your calculator. So I've already gone here into my Y editor. I've put the equation in. Always a good idea to check to make sure you put it in correctly, because if you make a mistake here, everything else will be wrong. And then you're going to graph it. So now you can take a look at this graph, and it looks like it goes through -3 and +3. But if you want to confirm that those are in fact roots, you can go to your table. And I just want to do one thing to my table here. Forgot. So you can go to your table, and you can take a look down here, and you can see here at +3, y is 0. And if I scroll down to -3, I see I also have y is 0. So that shows you that those two are roots. So now you know that +3 and -3 are roots. If +3 and -3 are roots, that also tells you that x plus 3 and x minus 3 are factors. So these are your roots and these are your factors. So now what you're going to use these factors to knock this equation down to an x squared. So you're going to go 1, -2, -3, 18, and -54. And you're going to do your synthetic division. I'm going to start with 3, but you could just as easily have started with -3. I'm going to bring down the 1. I'm going to multiply. I'm going to add. I'm going to multiply, and then I'm going to add. I'm going to multiply, add. I'm going to multiply and add. I know that these are factors, so I know that I have to get a 0 here as my remainder. This tells me that I have started with an x to the 4th, so this is going to be x to the 3rd plus x squared plus 0x plus 18. Well, I still can't factor this, right? It doesn't follow my quadratic pattern, so I don't know of any other way to factor this. But I still have this -3 here that I can use as a root. So I'm going to continue my synthetic division with -3. I'm going to bring down the 1. I'm going to multiply. I'm going to add. I'm going to multiply. I'm going to add. I'm going to multiply. I'm going to add. This now tells me that I'm left with an x squared minus 2x plus 6. So I now know that this polynomial that I started with factors to all of this. Right? So now I've gotten it down to all its factors. I know that this is going to be 3 and this is -3. I just have to figure out what this would be when I solve this for x. So if I say x squared minus 2x plus 6 equals 0, it doesn't look like it factors, so I'm going to have to go to my quadratic formula. So x is minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4, a is 1, so c is 6, all over 2a. Well, 4 minus 24 will give me a -20. And I know here, if this is a negative, I'm going to have an I, and I might as well simplify square root of 20 at the same time. And now, if I can simplify all three of these numbers, then I should. So this will be 1 plus or minus I square root of 5. So here I have 2 answers, 3 answers, and 4 answers. All right, let's try another one. All right, same thing. I have too many terms. I don't know how to solve it. So the first thing I'm going to do is to go to my calculator and go ahead and put it into my calculator. Go to my Y editor and carefully put in 4x to the 4th plus 8x to the 3rd minus 3x squared minus 7x plus 3. I'm going to check my equation. 4x to the fourth, 8x to the third, minus 3x squared, minus 7x plus 3. That looks good. I'm going to graph it. All right, well, this is not a good window, so I need to reduce my x's and reduce my y's. So let's go from like -3 maybe to 2. And let's just see if I go to here to negative, let's see if I go -5, what that looks like. All right, so that gives me a good idea of what this graph looks like. And I can see here, this is -1, -2, and this is +1. So I don't see any whole numbers here where I can see where it crosses. But I want to take a little bit of a closer look in here, see maybe what's going on at a half, and maybe what's going on between -1 and -2. So if I go to my graph or my table now is in ones, and I don't see any zeros in my y's, but I can change what my table increments are. So here, if I go to second window, you see above it, it says table set. So second window, and I'm going to say that this change in table or my table steps are in, I'm going to change that to 0.5. And now if I look at my table, I can see, oh, I see a 0 here at x equals -3/2 or -1.5. And if I scroll down a little bit more, see if I can see any others. Here's another one, x equals 1/2. Now I can continue to scroll and see if I can find any others, but these numbers seem to go up pretty quickly, so it doesn't look like I'm going to find another 0. And you usually are only going to have to look for halves. I'm not going to make it some weird fraction that you're going to have to look up. So I would only have my table increments set in ones or halves. So now let's go back to our equation and see if we can solve it from here. So now we know that x equals -3/2 or x equals a +1/2. Let's do our synthetic division. 4, 8, -3, -7, 3. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. I don't have to put any zeros in. I'm going to start with a half. I'm going to bring down the 4. I'm going to multiply, so that'll give me 2. I'm going to add, will give me 10. I will multiply and get a 5. I will add and get a +2. I will multiply, which gives me 1. I will add, which will give me -6. I will multiply, which will give me -3 and give me 0. It has to be 0 because I know that x equals a half is a root. This now tells me that I have 4x to the third plus 10x squared plus 2x minus 6. I have a choice here. I can continue my synthetic division with -3/2, or I can take a quick look and see if this could factor by grouping. So let's check it out. All right, so from the first two terms, I could take out a 2x squared, which will leave me with a 2x plus 5, but then I can't do anything there. So it doesn't look like that's going to help me, but it's something that you probably want to check out. So that didn't help me. So let's continue our synthetic division with -3/2. I'm going to bring down the 4. I'm going to multiply. That'll be -12/2, which will be a -6. That'll give me a +4. So I know when I multiply again, I'm going to get a -6. When I add, I'm going to get a -4. So now this will give me a +12/2, which will be a +6, which is a 0. So now this tells me I'm left with 4x squared plus 4x minus 4. And now I can very simply divide out the 4 or factor it out. It doesn't really make a difference. I'll have x squared plus x minus 1 equals 0. And now I can either factor that, doesn't look like it's going to factor, or I can use my quadratic formula. So x is minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Let me move this camera down a little bit. And so this is going to be -1 plus or minus. This is going to be 1 plus 4, so this will be the square root of 5 all over 2. I can't simplify that any more. So here I have 2 answers, 3 answers, 4 answers. Hope that helps.